work. I was even told a story, like one of our customers who did a gig for a big band and they did all the AV for it, and they said one of the handlers, when they were unpacking the truck, dropped an entire rack, 42U rack, off the back of the lorry onto its back off the forklift, and they picked the whole thing up off the ground, plugged it in, and it all still worked, you know, and they carried on, did the show and repaired it afterwards. So, you know, you have to, you know, you can't
don't get that in a data center.
Yeah, no. You don't. Hopefully you won't have that in a
Welcome to the Making It Happen podcast by Sims International. For those that don't know me, I'm Kevin Howes. I lead the sales and marketing team here at Sims. And I'm delighted to say today that I've got with us a chap called Chris Hollidge from G2 Digital Video. And for those that don't know Chris and the company, I will pass over to Chris now to introduce himself and what it is that he does.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so I'm Chris Hollidge from G2 Digital Video. We're a manufacturer of rack-mounted computer hardware and workstations that we provide predominantly for sort of AV industry, but lots of different markets, lots of different people. So yeah, happy to be here to have a chat to you today, Kevin.
And welcome. And fortunately for us today, bearing in mind yesterday was the hottest day of the year, it's nice and cool here today. So hopefully the conversation will be the hot thing.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, definitely need to be inside in our. Thankfully, we did have some air conditioning running yesterday, so we weren't melting too much. But of course, then you leave and go outside, and it's absolutely roasting, wasn't it?
Like hitting a brick wall with warm. Yes,
exactly
that. So, I guess starting really with thank you for the introduction around the company. Maybe if you could just cover for those that don't know. So when was G2 founded? How did the G2 story start?
So we're actually in our 20th year this year. So 2003, we first started trading in April. So hopefully next year we'll have a little soiree to celebrate our, as I say, our 20 years in business. But yeah, we started out in the early days actually just doing sort of small hardware systems. I actually used to be a project manager way back in the day for a interactive kiosk company, and back in the sort of early noughties, reliable hardware was always a bit of an issue actually. So I started G2 actually with the idea of sort of creating sort of mini PCs and small format hardware to try and resolve the issue of fitting computers into tight spaces. But that was the way I used to take screens off laptops and do all kinds of things to get hardware into these places. So yeah, it was using a bit of engineering background and various things to perhaps sort of create some new solutions that didn't exist at the time, and things really went from there, I guess. You know, over the years we did more niche products, and we've always worked with business customers all along. We've never really been we never worked with consumers because our products never appealed that way. But yeah, later on those sort of products, I guess, sort of developed as our customer base increased over the years. And we were approached by a customer one day who just said, you know, have you ever thought about rack mounting some of this, because you've got some good hardware systems here? And that kind of all started it really. You know, I wasn't really sure, you know, where things were going to go in those early days, you know, in terms of market space and things, but it was particularly in AV where we found there was real traction for rack mounted systems. And so yeah, our one new PC actually was the first product we ever designed. I mean, all right, it doesn't look anything like it used to back 16 17 years ago,
about a quarter of the size and weight and everything else. Yeah,
this is it. Yeah, but fundamentally it's it was the same principle under which we designed it, which is a short depth unit to mount lots of machines in a rack enclosure to run AV, like media server types software to display, to run signage on lots of screens. And that for a long time became our bread and butter product, if I'm honest.
Well, and I guess, so going back 20 years ago then, so there probably wasn't an awful lot of companies offering what you were offering at the time, because ultimately, you know, most of the things you bought were at that point bog standard from the tier 1 OEMs.
Yeah, exactly that, you know, and to be honest, you know, a lot of it is still that way even these days. You know, as you say, the tier ones with all have the massive share of the data center market and produce obviously tons of servers, which people love, and they've got great support and all that kind of thing. But you know, if I can, if I'm able to sort of clearly sort of talk about the difference between workstations and desktops and servers, you know, the applications are quite different, you know, so that, as you say, the tier ones are all in the server and the data center market, you know, and that's what they're interested in, is, you know, large pools of users accessing lots of machines in clusters and doing all this kind of complicated thing. But our customers aren't into any of that. You know, what they're after is dedicated hardware on site or on location where someone's using it for quite a heavy duty task. And there is still a need to rack mount. You know, rack mounting isn't all about data centers. You know, there is a question of portability. It's a rugged system to be able to fix a computer into a housing or a carry cable or into the back of a truck, you know, OB or a touring truck or anywhere, and have it securely mounted there, so that, you know, these devices can be moved around. And the tier ones don't do that. You know, they don't make systems with that sort of rugged principle in mind, and that's where our marketplace is. You know, is creating those systems and having reliable, you know, reliable enclosures and things that work. I was even told a story, like one of our customers who did a gig for a big band and they did all the AV for it, and they said one of the handlers, when they were unpacking the truck, dropped an entire rack, 42U rack, off the back of the lorry onto its back off the forklift, and they picked the whole thing up off the ground, plugged it in, and it all still worked, you know, and they carried on, did the show and repaired it afterwards. So, you know, you have to, you know, you can't
don't
do
get that
with,
in a data center.
yeah,
No.
you don't. Hopefully you won't have that in a data center. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess that throws up its own challenges, right? So making it ruggedized, what are the steps and the processes that you need to go through that would be different to a data center to make this product as rugged as you're talking about? Because I guess there are a number of challenges that exist outside of the data center where, you know, it's a fairly stable environment. So suddenly, you know, you're dealing with probably heat, you're dealing with movement, you're dealing with a lot of other aspects that just aren't part of the data center.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it is exactly that. You know, in a data center, everything is controlled, isn't it? You know, climate, humidity, everything, the environmentals are quite easy to work with. With us, you know, we can have kit outside. It could be in the roof of the theater, you know, where it's sort of 40 degrees, particularly like yesterday. You know, you know, it gets transported, you know, so we do have to, you know, our systems are it helps them being slightly smaller, I guess. You know, if you imagine a really big 1U server, it just has a bit of movement intrinsically because you can't make it solid. But when you sort of shrink things down a bit, you know, we just design our enclosures so they have additional screws, you know, and rigidity in the way that they're designed so that they don't move around so much. And the fixings where the units mount into the rack, you know, predominantly with Dell and HP, they have all these toolless fixings, which are very quick and nice to put together, but that doesn't stand any kind of movement, you know, so you need proper fixings to be able to secure the units into the racks and things. And yeah, it's just a solid construction. You know, that's what people say about a kit, you know, is that it just, when you pick it up, it feels solid and reliable.
And how do you manage redundancy in those kind of issues? Because obviously, if there's an issue on field or out on site, that's very different to having an issue in a data center, for example. So what precautions or what steps do you put in place to manage redundancy and to make sure that there is a backup in the event that something, hopefully it doesn't, but does go wrong?
Yeah, it's inevitable, isn't it? Unfortunately, and it's guaranteed that on a show, you know, if you've got something important going on, that you're going to have an issue. I mean, to be fair, an awful lot of clients run backup machines in these very critical situations, but the hardware that we design still is very similar in principle in terms of you know, the large servers that we, you know, we have redundant power supplies, we have hot swappable bays. You know, so there's lots of options to put in redundancy for configuring the hardware. I mean, hot swap redundancy in terms of the hard drives these days has moved on masses. You know, we've now got M.2s for speed and U.2s for sort of high availability. There's just tons and tons of different options now that you can put into the systems. But I think it does help that SSDs have got larger in capacity, because obviously now it means not having to use 3.5-inch drives. You start putting too many 3.5-inch drives in the system, and you need a forklift to lift it by itself anyway. So SSDs have definitely helped with that sort of portability, I think, and the capacity and everything else. But I guess that's perhaps where we differ again slightly, is that in a data center, you're going to have this requirement for lots of terabytes and terabytes of capacity, whereas for us, actually, people just want fast, reliable storage to be able to run shows on. So and that's where the RAID and redundant power supplies can come in and sort of help with all of that. I think perhaps one of the last things I guess I didn't mention about environmentals is cooling, of course, because these systems do get subjected to some pretty different sort of temperature constraints and things. And so over the years, we've worked in lots of different sort of designs and things to try and mitigate noise, because some of our customers have noise sensitive environments, but also just working with really high-end processors. AMD's new Threadripper range, they've just released the 5000 series Threadrippers. These are seriously powerful processors that use an awful lot of energy and dissipate an awful lot of heat that we have to try and get through. And so a number of years back, actually, we were lucky enough to work with a games company who needed to run, at the time, I think it was the i9 9900K, so it was a desktop processor, but they wanted to run it absolutely flat out as fast as it could go all the time without any performance degradation. So they literally wanted the 5 gig per core all the time. And then
possibly asking for the impossible. But...
it was, it's just so small, this thing, you just think, I don't know how it can do that. And it is just about getting the heat off it as quick as you can. So we actually came up with a water-cooled solution for it. Now, this was not something that was being done at the time. There was water cooling in desktop towers, for gamers and this kind of thing. But to put something in a rack-mounted solution that would tour with this event that was going around and everything else was a big challenge. And so we engineered a solution that came up with that water cooling, and I can't remember how many systems went out, but it's on a 6-month roadshow that they were running. And yeah, that was the start of us doing these sort of higher end water cooling systems as well, and of course that has now developed into GPUs and all kinds of other things as well. But yeah, it's definitely been some challenges over the years, that's for sure.
So with that, in terms of the innovation, I guess the takeaway there is this because you have the ability in-house to customize and to work and to innovate in a way that perhaps others don't.
I think that's what it is, exactly. We center very heavily on an engineering company. In fact, I would almost say we're an engineering company that makes computers rather than a computer company that likes to engineer. So all of our design is done in-house, all of our R&D and everything is all done in-house, and then we subcontract the actual physical manufacturing out to companies who have that sort of resource set up. But yes, that's what we major on, is the actual testing and finding solutions and coming up with the principles, I guess, to make these things work. We are quite lucky that we have a good customer base of people who like to test things as well. If we've got something coming up that we need a bit of application testing on, we might ask a customer if they've got a solution that they want to try it out on and get some real world testing. There's nothing better than getting things out in the field and actually knowing how they work. But we can only really do that as the sort of smaller organization that we are. If you're one of the big manufacturers, that's not the kind of thing you do. You develop solutions and you come up with all the answers and then you package it up. But I guess we are, being that sort of type of organization, we like to work with our customers and develop these sort of perhaps more niche applications.
And do you think that plays a big part from your side in terms of development of the products? Is it actually driven by customer demand in terms of going out, finding out what their problems are, and then finding a solution that's bespoke to them, as opposed to a broad range of products that you just offer out to market?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we like customer feedback. We quite heavily take that on board in terms of where the direction is going to be. And at the end of the day, there's no point in creating something that people aren't buying. I guess that's the advantage of being in business so long now, is that all of our products from the one new PC where we started, they all have been generated out of customer interest, and we're still going now. I mean, we're about 15 products, like base products as we are at the moment, throughout the different sizes, and then someone else will come along and say, actually, what I need is something that's going to do this, and so we'll look at the sort of engineering of it and move along. But it's things have changed in engineering as well over the years. Back back 15 years ago, you had to go through a lot of processes with tooling and sampling and things like that to be able to create things. But 3D CAD and rapid prototyping and all this kind of thing, 3D print, it just has moved things along massively. So now the actual turnaround in terms of getting a customer demand through to an actual full production batch can be as little as 3 or 4 weeks. It's quite fast to actually move things around. But that again is because perhaps of the sort of engineering background and all the knowledge that we have built up over so long, we don't need to ask so many questions or test so much, because we know an awful lot of what the answers would be or what the problems might be in creating these different solutions. And and this is where we are at the moment, isn't it? We've had all these issues with shipping and this kind of thing in the last couple of years with getting things out of the Far East. It's difficult for some manufacturers, our competition, to be able to get product from Far East into the UK and be able to engineer it and design it. The fact that we keep everything UK side, so all of our engineering, everything else is done, all the manufacturing is done in the UK. So we've got complete design control and access, control over how the supply chains are working and everything else, and that really helps us in terms of deploying those solutions quickly.
And across the 20-year span, have you seen that the demand from customers, things are expected quicker? Perhaps previously they may have worked further in advance. Now it's turning up and saying, well, actually, I need it within 3-4 weeks. Is that becoming more of a requirement?
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? Everybody wants everything faster, don't they? That's the issue. There's I guess it sort of depends where they are, actually, because we have a German sales office as well, so we deal an awful lot in Northern Europe, and the requirements coming out of there are often more time limited than perhaps we have in the UK. But I guess the thing is that an awful lot of people are just used to at the moment, particularly, we've all sort of come away from this just in time, everything's sitting on a shelf, and we're all used to the fact that now in the real world, unfortunately, component shortages and things are causing delays, and we're working a little bit further ahead. So to be honest, quite often our customers are prepared for the fact that we say, actually we could do that from 3 or 4 weeks, and and they're like, okay, well that actually I could sort of work with. And some of these changes, they aren't massive, because our product range is so varied now. We can solve an awful lot of solutions straight away, just with what we have. So an awful lot, the sort of changes that we get involved in now, to be honest, tend to be more branding related. Because this is of course, one of the big advantages we have, I guess, is as a design manufacturer, is that we have control over, how our products look. And therefore, if a customer comes to us and says, look, actually what I'd like is my logo on this, or I'd like the front panel a different color, or, they can be quite minor, some of the changes. And so we can run those sort of changes, and we can create custom metal work and things, and that stuff, sometimes doesn't even take a couple of weeks. Branding is a relatively straightforward exercise these days, and we have plenty of customers who brand like that to create that sort of black box system, that's going to really benefit their product, and provide real value add for their sales when they're trying to deliver their solutions.
That's interesting. So I guess going back a step, you kind of touched on the core base of 15 products. For those that don't know who you are, or perhaps are interested in working with you, could you just give an overview on what those products are and what they do? So perhaps anybody that is interested can go and have a look and see what's available.
Yeah, sure. So I guess we start at the sort of smallest end of the range. So we still have some basic mini PCs, which can just be mounted to a wall, and they just are a compact solution that, as I say, can be pretty much be mounted anywhere. We then sort of build up into some what we call hybrid systems, I guess. So what we're sort of classifying there are some mini PCs that essentially can be mounted side by side in one use. So we have 2 products, which is the Bantam and the Intel NUC-based system. So the Bantam is a sort of desktop-based PC that you can mount 2 of them side by side on a 1U panel. The NUC, that you can actually mount 3 of them side by side on a 1U panel. So in those solutions, what we're going for is obviously to have a bit of density computing, where if customers are looking for a backup, a bit like we were talking about earlier, they can actually put a couple of units onto a 1U plate. They can still put it in a small flight case and they can carry it around. Or some customers, we supplied 50, 100 units just because they want high density in a rack, and they just want to get all of the stuff into it. But in those situations, our sort of unique design on those, because everyone's, lots of people have used an Intel NUC, or probably even have one sitting in their office somewhere. The unique design from our point of view is putting it into a package where we can add some of the sort of features that you need for rack mounting, and we sort of see those as an internal AC power supply for starters, where you plug your 230 volts straight in the back of the unit, additional networking so that you for connecting to different setting up VLANs or doing anything different on the networking. PoE, we now do some power over Ethernet devices, so you literally can plug single cable into the back of the unit, you can power the PC, you can do all your networking and everything else over it, and almost run it as an entirely headless system. So yeah, on that entry level sort of scale, that sort of high density range of systems, we have those sort of products. We then sort of jump up into the single systems in 1U. So we've got like our 1U Nano, or 1U PC, and our 1U Plus, and we've sort of got that standard naming convention throughout the range. So 1U's pretty simple, straightforward. Nano is the shortest unit we do. The PC is the middle one, and the Plus is a deeper one. So, and we have that through 2U and 3U and 4U. We have kept that naming convention. So our 1U Nano is a tiny little short depth thing, it's just a motherboard, small PCI expansion bay, and it's great for a comms cabinet, a control system, something basic. I mean, you can still put an i7 processor in it if you want to, but it is fundamentally just a compact and cost effective system that that lots of customers use for those sort of basic solutions. And then as we go up through there, the 1U PC, which, as I said earlier, first product we ever made, similar kind of sort of processes and things that you can put into that system. You can fit 2 PCIe cards in there, which is quite handy if people are trying to do multiple things or multiple inputs on a 1U system. And then we've also got hot swap bays, hot swap hard drive 2.5-inch bays on that unit as well. So yeah, that system's quite configurable. The 1U Plus uses a slightly bigger motherboard. So in these ones, we go into a bigger motherboard where it's got more flexibility around the PCI expansion slots, and you can put more hard drives in it. You can put bigger processors in it. We do also have what we call a 1U Titan. It was a project we did a little while back to be able to mount thread rippers in 1U, and we've done it as a bit of an R&D, a bit of a test case, and it's been quite successful. But if I'm honest, most people, I think by the time they get to wanting to use thread rippers, are used to the fact they're going to have a 2U or a 3U or whatever it's going to be, because they want to put GPUs in it and other things as well. So not been a massive seller, that one, but it is still part of our range. I think 2U is probably our bread and butter really of everything that we now sell. The 2U Nano particularly. So we created the 2U Nano, I think was maybe our third product that we ever developed. And that was because people were asking for high power processors in a short depth case, but with a big graphics card. So I'm going back now to when we had the NVIDIA, the 1080 Ti was the sort of first powerhouse of a graphics card that people were starting to use. And that was a bit of a challenge for us to see if we could mount that into a short depth case. So we literally created the 2U Nano on the basis that we were going to put that card in there with an i9 processor and sort of see how it went. And as it was brilliant. It was a tight fit, but actually from a cooling point of view, we could do everything we needed to. It was compact. You just couldn't get any more density into a smaller device really. And even now, we just sell tons of the 2U Nano because it's a really popular system for AV professionals, when they're out touring.
So the 2U into AV out touring, I mean, I'd imagine that's a market, I think we touched on it briefly when we last met, that's a market that's had its challenges over the last kind of 2 years.
Hasn't it?
As a result of everything that's been happening. So how do you see the opportunity moving forwards as hopefully there's a rebound?
Yeah, I think so, and we definitely have seen that from an awful lot of customers. Obviously, this year we've seen an awful lot of festivals now running. Basically, normally, lots of people are keen to get back out again, aren't they, into the fields and out into the theatres, into the shows, and all this kind of thing. We're done with being tucked away. So yeah, it's now all about getting out and about. Definitely seen lots more shows coming back online. A lot of customers have, a lot of companies have struggled over the last couple of years, and that's been challenging for them. But, we have pretty good cost-effective units, with lots of different variety across the range. And for us, that's, it's not about selling the most expensive unit. For us, it's about finding the right solution, and we have customers who come and say, oh, I need an i9, I need a massive graphics card and all this kind of thing. And it's like, well, let's talk about what you're doing with it, and perhaps we can help you sort of economize this down, because there's no point in spending more money than you have to. And that's part of where we sit. It's advising the right systems and making sure that people understand what they're buying and what perhaps their upgrade paths are. But yeah, definitely in terms of the AV sort of market, and just return to those live events, it's been really good to see people come back out. Obviously, we've got Christmas coming. Hopefully, things will start to sort of pick back up for the sort of theatre productions around Christmas time, and yeah, things continue to grow in that respect.
So your business over the last 2 years has been, I know we spoke, has performed strongly. So I guess outside of AV, you've also found other ways and other markets to address. I know you touched on some of the kind of out-of-bounds trucks. Is there any other areas that you've kind of moved into as a result of a quiet couple of years on the AV side?
Yeah, I think a lot of companies perhaps have seen a need for cloud services in general, haven't we? I think we've all gone onto Zoom, and I'm sure 365 and lots of big companies have all sort of benefited from customers moving to those sort of cloud services. So one of the things that we've seen is there's been a need for sort of these remote workstations. Again, coming back to what I was talking about at the start, not everything that sits in the data center is a server serving lots of customers. Some of it is dedicated hardware. It's one user, one device. And we have a number of customers who work in the sort of I guess sort of animation fields, in the sort of high intensity, high workload environments, who are needing to have the advantages of remote offsite working, but with the power of workstations. And so our 2U PC was the one that we sort of focused all of the water cooling around, and the one that we've continued to target an awful lot of our energy and R&D around, sort of working with the high power processors. So yeah, through lockdown, we've seen the AMD Threadrippers making a real appearance in that sort of remote rendering and environments where you need to be able to be doing sort of a lot of number crunching off site. Because I think, apart from the fact an awful lot of companies have said, maybe we don't need so much office space, maybe we don't need to be paying for that, maybe the best thing to do is to have all of this stuff tucked away somewhere neat and safe in a data center underground somewhere, where we don't have to worry about looking after it. And so people are moving to that sort of almost sort of workstation as a service, actually putting this stuff in where they can switch it on and off. And so yeah, we've seen a massive increase in business in terms of that sort of side of things as well.
And I guess in that area, performance is becoming even more important. The demands on the workstations and the software capability are ever increasing, because constantly people want more performance, more power, more speed.
Yeah, exactly. People always want more, don't they? Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is it. And rightly so. The chip manufacturers have been answering that with these ridiculous high-end processors. And as I say, we've seen SSDs just get faster and faster. And it's interesting actually, in the sort of lower end of the market, in the desktop market, the i3s and i5s and things, these processors still do obviously way more than the average user ever needs to actually perform on hardware. But at the opposite end of the scale, you have people who just need more and more and more processing, because what used to happen on GPU is now being moved back onto CPU again, because of this sort of efficiencies and things of the processor design, and the number of cores. So yeah, there's a real stark contrast between the two different ends of the spectrum in terms of what people are looking for. But quite reliably, it's where they're being used. You know, you see the high-end stuff being used in broadcast, it's been used in the remote rendering, it's been used in the film industry. You know, it's where they want the absolute cutting edge of performance is where these systems are going, and they still want them rack mounted. You know, it's the big tier ones do desktop systems and things, but we're finding rack mounting is still the preferred choice, where people can tuck that hardware away out of the way, where it's not making a load of noise, or put it in a remote data center and not have to worry about it.
And I guess from that perspective, you talked about some of the customization you can do. You talked about your consultative approach and engineering approach. I guess that's really kind of the leading edge in terms of being able to test those platforms out with these companies that want the very best. And then obviously that then becomes standard beyond that for anybody else that wants similar.
Yeah, this is it, and that's exactly that. We've got some great examples of these projects being deployed, you know, in different countries, where they just want to have, you know, the sort of best hardware. They want it branded, they want it looking nice, they want it to be, you know, on brand for their company and that kind of thing, because it's that whole solution, isn't it? It's the whole thing about, we all want to be able to offer our customers the best, you know, the most unique solution, something that no one else can, something that looks amazing, something they can show off to their customers. You know, it's about creating this this sort of look, and whilst it's all very well, you can go and buy off the shelf hardware, the problem is it slightly lets down that sort of big end project, because someone goes, well, I know where you buy that from because it's written all over it and I know what it costs, and somehow it devalues the overall sort of aesthetic, the whole sort of feeling of what you sort of created, you know, in these environments.
Almost towards the Me Too element of it, as opposed to actually differentiated.
Yes.
And so kind of we kind of covered a lot around product, we covered a lot around what it is in terms of the problems in the markets and the areas that you address. In terms of the kind of services that you offer them, so what in addition, if as a customer, if I've come and I bought a system, what additional services do you offer me?
So we've, I mean, so as a smaller company, you know, we've over the years sort of struggled with support and services and things, you know, and getting that sort of solutions to end customers. But these days, you know, we've now got lots of financial services in terms of doing lease arrangements and rentals and all kinds of different things. We've got on-site support contracts that we can offer on next day or critical services, which we can now supply to customers through a partner that we've got, who's got engineers all over the UK, Europe, and over the world and things. So, you know, we now have a lot more infrastructure, a lot more capability to be able to back up these systems, you know. But more than that, you know, we aren't a faceless company. You know, we aren't just a telephone number where you end up in a call center and you end up with the ticket number and now you're waiting. The point being, you call us, you get someone to speak to, you know, and there and then we will start talking about your problem. We'll work out what the best thing to do is. You know, we want to solve customer issues and we want them done quickly, you know, because that just creates a much better feeling from everyone's point of view that when you're dealing with us, you know, you're being looked after. And that's really important to me individually. You know, all the years that we've been bringing G2 up, and all the things that we've been working toward are towards, you know, providing that next level service. Not just people say, you know, oh yeah, I provide good service to my customers. It's not just about that. It's providing something better than our competitors do, and doing something else that creates, you know, that sort of security that people want when they're going to be buying some, you know, high-end workstations. You know, a few years back, we engaged in the ISO 9001 sort of system and brought it on board within the company, and we now, you know, we're audited every year for our sort of quality services. You know, we are really keen to learn where we fall down. You know, if there's any issues, then they're recognized and they're engineered out so that, you know, we don't get those problems again. You know, that's what we do. It's not just about building products. You know, we want that complete offering.
And it's so important. I think you and I, we were fortunate enough to meet not so long ago. I think you and I talked at length about actually how a lot of that service level, the people element, has been lost over the last kind of 2 or 3 years, with lots of companies hiding behind lack of people to address such issue, and actually relying on kind of voicemail systems and the note messages, whereas actually what businesses want is actually, I want you to know that my problem is important, and it's going to be solved, and it's going to be solved by a person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and that's one of the reasons we like Sims. You know, we've, you know, been doing this sales now for a while. We like the service we get. You know, that you as a company get, that you're on the same wavelength we are. You know, you know, we like working with companies like that, and I think that's what it's about. You know, it's not about cost all the time. It's about, you know, working with companies and partners who have like-minded and similar sort of things, and we, you know, we want to sort of connect with our customers at all end points, you know, from the sales right the way through to the problems. You know, we like finding ways of being able to just talk to people. It's one of the reasons we don't sell products on our website. You know, we don't have an e-commerce platform, because we want you to know what we sell. We want you to know what we do, but we want you to come and talk to us. You know, we want to understand what your problem is and how we're going to help you deliver that.
And consultation is such a key part, understanding the challenges and understanding the direction. It does make a huge difference. And as you say, that's perhaps not what you get from the tier ones, because it's just a platform that's available. And unless you're willing to spend a huge amount, perhaps not so important. So talk to me about the number of customers you serve then. So what does that look like? What do the production lines look like? You know, what are your capabilities in terms of on an average month or week?
So generally we sit, so in an average year, we probably ship between sort of 2,000 and 3,000 systems. Currently, we are actually just in the process of going through a relocation. So we've been in our current premises and expanded out through the sort of building over the 20 years, and we just got to a point now where we're so completely out of space that we've had to make a move. So yes, we're shortly over to new premises that are just creating
What does that offer once to the new premises in terms of additional resource?
Just a much bigger production capacity. This is it. You know, we'll be going to sort of 3 or 4 times the production capacity that we are currently now, and it's and apart from anything else, just the stocking, warehousing, you know, the component shortages and things have taught everyone, I think, that you just have to unfortunately hold more stock of everything to be able to deliver products. And so that's what the new premises will offer us, is those advantages in terms of more stocking capacity, more production capacity, but also the engineering side. You know, one of the things that we would really like to get into is the sort of small batch production, manufacturing on site. You know, I don't ever have a view that G2 is going to be actually manufacturing our own products. I think that's probably a step too far. But so coming back to the rapid prototyping, small batch productions, the customization, there's an awful lot of work there that we, with a bit more space, we'll be able to sort of bring that back in house, and then we'll be able to be even more dynamic in terms of the solutions that we're sort of offering. And yeah, that's, you know, that's the hope, you know, with all of this, is to sort of keep growing. As you say, we've only ever grown since our inception 20 years ago, and this last year we've seen a big bounce in terms of customers who's obviously been recovering from lockdown. So yeah, it's been challenging times, but I'm pleased to say that things are definitely looking more positive, which is good.
And I think that's probably echoed across the industry in general. I think the outlook is looking far more positive. But I think certainly for those companies, as you said before, that are consultative, that are people focused, and that are willing to offer a service that perhaps is differentiated. So, I mean, from my side, I'm always fascinated by where kind of the memory technologies end up. I guess for you, the passion comes from the love of technology, but also the variation where your technology goes, right?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, I mean, that's what, you know, an awful lot of the guys in production, you know, like hearing about, is where everything's sort of heading, you know, in terms of you know, the technology, where the products are being used, and everything else. So it's a really exciting, yeah, to know where things are sort of going out to, you know, those sort of key projects and things, and yeah, sort of developing those ideas, you know, and getting involved in those projects. Yeah,
great stuff. So I mean, from my side, is there anything else that you'd want to speak about that would cover? I think we covered quite a lot around G2's capabilities, people, services, products. Is there anything else for anybody listening that you kind of want to mention about what makes you so unique, on top of the areas that we've spoken about already?
yeah. I mean, it's as you say, you know, we've talked about a lot here, haven't we? I mean, I guess, you know, it's just recapping, I suspect, you know, just in terms of if you've got solutions that you're not finding anywhere else on the market, you know, if you've got something that, you know, you may not need an awful lot of systems, but you need to something a bit unique, something that you're not finding with any of the tier ones, a solution that, you know, perhaps is just a bit out of the ordinary, then come and talk to us. You know, who knows, we might have already done it. You know, and likewise, if you're struggling with stocking, you know, lead times are long. This is one of the big problems again we're seeing, you know, with very long lead times. We're carrying an awful lot of stock. You know, we try and mitigate out these problems, and as I say, because of our UK manufacturing, we aren't suffering from an awful lot of the issues that perhaps some of the other companies are. So yeah, as I say, we're always here, always happy to have a chat. You know, jump on our website, drop us an email, and or, you know, even jump on our LinkedIn. You know, particularly at the moment, we're doing an awful lot of work trying to keep our sort of social media and our innovations and things up to date, so that people know what we're working on and what's coming along. Talking about new technologies that we're allowed to talk about at the time,
Not
you
under
know, and all this
embargo.
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Yeah, this is it. You know, and so yeah, just keep up to date with our news, and sign up to our newsletter if you want to hear about that.
And actually, on that note, I will say there's a rather impressive video on your website that does talk about all of the stuff that we've discussed here today, and a very bite-sized piece. So I will put a link to that on the podcast as well, so that people can go straight to that and have a look. Good stuff. And I know when we last met, you told me that you have a particularly interesting hobby. Have you had much chance to go out sailing recently?
Yeah, not too bad actually. I was actually supposed to be sailing on Monday night with the Scouts, which is how I sort of spend an awful lot of my time in the weeks these days. But yes, with the temperatures up in the early 30s, it was a little warm, it's got to be said. But yeah, try and get out in the summer if I can. Hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll get out again and get out in the water. But yeah, maybe when it's a bit cooler. No, it's not much fun like being in a caravan or a boat when it's sort of 30-degree heat. So yeah,
No, I'd imagine not.
Yeah, and there's no wind. You know, you've got to pick your opportunities. But yeah,
yeah, without wind, it doesn't really work, does it?
It's not so much fun. No, definitely not.
And I'll go as far to say I'd imagine with the right request for quote opportunities to join the boat with you at some stage.
Well, this is it. Absolutely. You know, yeah, definitely. If anyone ever wants to come out and enjoy a bit of the Solent, you know, it's not far from us. Yeah, definitely, that'd be good fun.
Good stuff. All right, Chris. Well, thank you very much for your time today. It's been great chatting to you. As I said, we'll put some links to various different areas of the website. And again, if anyone does have any questions, I know firsthand how great the team are at G2, and they will respond very quickly to you.
No, much appreciated, Kevin. Really, really thanks for your time today, you know, and to Sims, you know, for all the work you guys are doing. So yeah, that was great. Thanks so much.